To the four thirds there. This is a micro four thirds camera. I know that because it says micro right there on the lens cap. To give it its full scientific name, it's an OM system OM1. And here it is flanked by some of my favourite lenses for the system, and I want to talk to you about why you, yes you, should consider one of these for your photography in 2025. So a very good evening boys and girls, and welcome back to another video. And as I've said, in this one I want to explain to you all of the reasons why I think you should consider looking at a micro four thirds camera for your photography, especially if you're someone that's never considered the system, or maybe you're someone who's heard horror stories about the system. Hopefully I can put a few of those myths and a few of those doubts to bed, and hopefully you'll consider picking the system that I love and use every single day. So first and foremost, let's talk about, well, the actual cameras themselves. This here in my hand, this is the current flagship camera from OM System. It's the OM1 Mark II, and it's an absolutely fantastic tool for taking photographs with. I, for instance, enjoy a lot of long exposure photography, and the computational modes inside of this thing, well, they're absolutely fantastic for the way that I shoot. I can throw a live ND filter on this camera, and it will simulate the look of throwing an actual ND filter on the front of the lens without actually having to get it out of the bag, and it just saves so much time and so much effort. And all you have to do is turn on live ND, and you can do long exposures at any time of the day, in any weather conditions, at any location. I can go out at night and do star trails and car light trails with this thing. I can throw up the live comp mode on. And what that does? Well, the camera takes a photograph, a base image. And on top of that, it will take a series of photographs and it will layer just the highlights on top of the base image. So you know when you go out there and you do long exposure star trails or long exposure car light trails and you have to take a series of photographs yourself and blend them all together in Lightroom and Photoshop? This thing, it does it for you. And it also outputs a RAW file, which is absolutely fantastic for those people who enjoy photo editing. This camera features a 20 megapixel sensor. Pretty small by today's standards, but don't let that fool you, because inside of here there is a high resolution shooting mode. The camera will use the pixel shift on the image stabilization motors, and it will move the sensor around a tiny little bit and take a series of 8 photographs and stitch them all together, and you end up with an 80 megapixel RAW file from a 20 megapixel sensor. And that's just on the tripod. If you want to do this handheld, you can do the same thing. The image stabilization in here is so good that you can stitch together handheld photographs to create a 50 megapixel RAW file. Again, fantastic for those of us that like to photo edit, and even better for those people that like landscape photography, where all of that little detail, it all adds up. Let's talk about the actual sensor in this camera. It's a 4/3 size sensor. It's around a quarter of the size of a full frame sensor. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people swear that full frame is king. But a sensor this size, well, it actually has its uses. See, I can throw a 100mm prime lens on here, and the full frame equivalent will be 200mm. So I don't have to go out there and spend an extortionate amount of money on a very long telephoto lens. So I can throw this lens on here, this 40-150, my plastic fantastic. We'll put it on now, we'll protect that sensor. 40-150. That's the marked focal length on the lens, with that 2x crop factor from the micro 4/3 size sensor, and 80-300 for less than £100. And believe it or not, for the price point, this thing is actually tack sharp. And that leads me on to the next question. What are the lenses like? So I've already mentioned the benefits of the focal length when it comes to the 4/3 size sensor in this micro 4/3 cameras, but what about the lenses then? So this is a 6mm f2 lens from Venus Laowa. On a full frame camera, 6mm will be virtually unusable unless you want that fisheye look that nobody seems to like apart from skate videos from the early 2000s. But 12mm field of view, with zero distortion, you're getting a really usable, ultra-wide angle lens for less than £500. And look at the size of it. It's tiny. You don't need to carry them big full-frame L-series lenses around anymore. These things fit in your pocket. You can fit half a dozen of these in a camera bag and forget that they're even there. A 60mm macro lens, an f2.8, one of the sharpest macro lenses that I've ever used. Again, the size of it, the weight of it, you don't notice that they're there. They're available on the used market for less than £300. A macro lens, a 60mm macro lens, a 120mm field of view for next to nothing. This one here is one of my favourite lenses, and it's a kit lens. Of all things, that dirty, horrible word that nobody on the internet likes, a kit lens. Let me tell you a side note on the kit lens. For those Canon shooters out there, the 24 to 105mm f4 lens that a lot of people own and love, it's technically a kit lens because it was sold in a kit with the 5Ds. Same thing, it's a kit lens. The 14 to 42, it's a variable aperture. Not a lot of people like that, but I find it great for video. But again, for such a cheap lens that you can pick up for around £80 used, it's actually tack sharp and really bloody usable. But what about those people that demand the maximum sharpness from their lenses? Well, don't let this fool you. These little Zucchio lenses or these little third-party manufacturer lenses, they're absolutely fantastic. They're sharp, they're cheap, they're affordable, they're usable, they're carryable. But there are those people out there who want the maximum performance from their cameras. Well, take this. This is the 12 to 40mm f2.8 Pro lens from Olympus. And it's a pro-grade lens. It is the sharpest lens I own for this system. And it is a lens that is on my camera pretty much 90% of the time. I find the 24mm to 80mm, it's just a usable range for the landscape photography that I like to do. And let's not forget, a lot of full-frame companies produce 24 to 80mm or 24 to 70mm 2.8 lenses. Olympus went in there with their own and produced something that produces absolutely fantastic image quality, but a fraction of the price of their full-frame counterparts. So how about those people that like to shoot ultra-wide then? 16 to 35s are very popular full-frame lenses. Well, I introduced the 8 to 25. It's a 16 to 50mm full-frame equivalent. It's an f4 all the way through the range, and it is tack sharp all the way from the 8mm all the way to that 25mm across the board. So don't be fooled when it comes to lens choice for micro four thirds systems. You're not limited by that 2x crop factor. It's not all standard views and medium and short telephotos. There are ultra wides, there's everything all the way across the focal range. So what about noise performance then from these things? I'm sure a lot of you have heard horror stories all around the internet about how bad the noise performance and image quality is from these cameras. Well, this here, this OM System OM1 Mark II, it has a backside illuminated sensor. I've used a lot of full frame DSLRs over the years, and I would put the image quality from this at this point on par with where the Canon 5D Mark III was around 11 years ago. The gap is shrinking. Backside illuminated sensors, they're the way forwards. You're gaining around a stop of noise performance, and it just eliminates all of the image quality issues people had at the advent of the Micro Four Thirds mount. So why do I like these things so much? Well, the aforementioned points, of course. But photography, it's a personal preference, isn't it? It's about what you want to do. And I landed on this purely by chance. In reality, I bought a broken EM10 Mark II a couple of years ago and kind of fell in love with how small and how lightweight, how portable, and the feature sets inside of the cameras. You've got your highlight and shadow clipping, You've got your zebras, so to speak, it's red and blue, it's the same thing. You have your focus peaking, which, for those people that like to manually focus, it's a great little tool. The EVFs in these things have improved leaps and bounds from where they were years ago. It's almost to the point now where you can't actually tell that you're looking at an LCD screen instead of through the lens. And that's probably only going to get better as time goes on. If you want something affordable, something usable, something full of quirky innovations like Live ND, GND, Live Bulb, Live Time, Live Composite, all of these computational features that just make photography all that more fun, all that more enjoyable, and all that more accessible, consider looking at one of these from Olympus. The EM1 Mark III. If you want Live ND, the Olympus EM1 Mark III, it's a great little introduction to how the system works for a camera that costs next to nothing these days. If you want top-notch autofocus performance, this thing has subject tracking in there, and I'm not just talking about faces and eyes. Motorcycles, planes, cars, birds, dogs, people. There's modes in here where the camera will recognise those subjects, and as long as you're holding the autofocus button down, the camera will stay locked onto that. It's incredible, it's something that you should try. If you want a system with almost instantaneous autofocus, if you want something where almost the entire sensor is one big autofocus point, you're not just limited to half a dozen, 10, 40 focus points in the centre of the screen. The entire sensor almost on these things is one big autofocus point. If you're somebody who doesn't like to shoot wide open all of the time and has a strange obsession with blurry backgrounds like Marcus from Photography Online, the depth of field in these cameras is phenomenal. I shoot a lot of landscape photography, so I need depth of field from front to back. But I'm gaining aperture advantage over my full frame companions. I can be down f5.6 where they will be at f11. I can be at f4 where they will be at f8. I can be at f2.8 where they will be at f5.6. And I'd be getting similar depth of fields, only I'm letting all of that extra light in there, which is helping with the image quality on the backside illuminated sensor. It's helping with shutter speed and those times where we want to eliminate motion blur in the scene. There's a lot of advantages to shooting these cameras, but the internet seems to have it against them. I'm not one of those people. I love this format. I love everything about it, from the computational photography, the live NDs, the range of lenses that's available, the depth of field that it gives me for landscape photography, and the new backside illuminated sensors where noise is a thing of the past. If you're in the market for a new camera this year, I urge you to try a Micro Four Thirds camera, and I guarantee you won't look back. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it and I've given you a little bit of inspiration when it comes to choosing a new camera system, please do give the video a thumbs up. It really does help the video and it helps to bring new viewers to see my content. And if you liked it a little bit more than that and you're new here and you see me for the first time, well, you can always press that subscribe button down below and you'll see more Micro Four Thirds related nonsense from myself every single week. So until the next time, I'm just going to love you and leave you and say peace and goodbye.